Welcome into another edition of the Cleveland Sports Realm podcast. My name is Jerome. I'm here with co-host Kevin and producer Derek steering the ship on the other side, captaining this whole operation here this evening. So we are going to get right into it. Not going to waste any time, and let's get right into it. Let's react to the Super Bowl. Got a bunch of other exciting things for you guys tonight too planned. Little Cavs and some Super Bowl reaction. Of course, our new famous thing, odds and ends. So let's get into the Super Bowl. An absolute domination by the Philadelphia Eagles. Shout out to you, Kevin. You were 100% right. You called the Dirty Birds winning this game last week. On a little heater lately, predicting things right.
Yeah. I've had a feeling about the Eagles since most of the beginning of the season. I just felt like they were the most well-rounded team. I did not see a complete blowout happening, and I think it's a rare instance where you can say that even in a blowout, the score it wasn't as close as the score indicates either.
No.
And they won by almost 3 touchdowns.
No, Mahomes threw a effort deep ball at the end, and Xavier Worthy's just the fastest player in the league and happened to luckily run under it. But absolute domination, 40-22. Couple of things that I wanted to hit on right off the rip here. Jalen Hurts, underrated, I think we got to call him. Great performance. They didn't rely on Saquon hardly at all. At one point, he had 10 carries for like 18 yards. It was Jalen Hurts in the defense, and that defense gave Mahomes 0.2 seconds to throw all night, Kevin.
Yeah, and this is one thing I'll actually give the Chiefs a lot of credit on, is that they clearly game planned for Saquon Barkley, because it's not like the Eagles were shy in trying to get him going. They went to him early and often, and the Chiefs definitely game planned around that. Now, when it comes to Jalen Hurts, I don't know if I'd say he's underrated. I think he's well respected amongst the league and amongst the common NFL fan. I'd say he's comfortably top 7 quarterback in the league. I think you could maybe make an argument for top 5.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Top 5, I thought, honestly, his most complete game came in the biggest game. Like, that's when he played his best, was during the Super Bowl. And, he just did everything right. And Philadelphia, credit Vic Fangio, man. A hell of a D coordinator he is, and he did an outstanding job. His game plan for Mahomes to just rush the crap out of him all night. The guy never had any second to throw. And, boy, they got home. They blitzed a lot. They also brought an even 4 a lot, but they got home and made Mahomes have a miserable night for him not to remember.
Yeah, I've never seen a performance like that from Patrick Mahomes ever, and I don't know if we'll ever see another one. Obviously the hype with that Chiefs team coming in and the potential to three-peat, you have to wonder if that got into their head at all of just over trying and trying to be that first team to get over that hump. But they didn't look like they had been, game planning for the Eagles at all. The Eagles looked, they out-physicaled them and outplayed them the entire game.
Yeah, and even when Kansas City, they don't run the ball that often. They try to get the running game going with Hunt and Pacheco. There was no room, no lanes, nothing. And just a masterclass by Vic Fangio.
And it seemed like that one play, I want to say it was 3rd and 11, and I can't remember if it was the second quarter. I want to say it was the second quarter. Mahomes rolled out right, and it looked like he hit DeAndre Hopkins, not necessarily in the chest. Like, DeAndre had to go down a little bit, but it hit both of his hands. It felt like at that point, that was when I started to realize this game's probably over.
I'll be honest, there was a large part of me that thought the whole game, Kansas City's going to come back. Like a lot of people were talking about that. But they, like you said, even they never showed a single sign of life or ounce for us, anything for us to believe in, as spectators watching the game. And, like I said, I wasn't that invested this year into the Super Bowl. I mentioned that if you go back and listen to last week's podcast. I wasn't all that hyped up for it. I was just simply going to sit down, and I was more concerned about the food that was on my plate in front of me, quite frankly. And, boy, we did have a nice hell of a spread there. But on a side note. But I'll tell you what, it never really, ended up formulating that they had any real chance to really get involved back in that thing. And I do remember the specific Hopkins play you bring up, and that's a catch that DeAndre Hopkins makes 9.5 times out of 10 in his career. And when that didn't happen, no running game. And the pass defense was just gash. And Kansas City's got some good pieces in the secondary, led by Trent McDuffie, all-pro corner. But boy, oh boy, they just never had a chance.
Yeah, I mean, when the Eagles went up, I'll say when the Eagles went up 17-0, and it was early in the second quarter. I was hanging out with my girlfriend Alex and some of her friends, and I did bring up, this might be a Patriots-Falcons situation where just the best quarterback in the game goes down early and they could potentially make that comeback, but the momentum just never seemed to shift in their favor at any point.
Never once. And I think a lot of folks had that thought. We're all sitting there thinking, okay, this is going to happen. Now, bigger picture stuff. I mean, Jalen Hurts has now won a Super Bowl, so I think any questions about him, we already said it. We think he's probably top 7, top 8 in the league. Any questions about him are probably shut down now. Nick Sirianni was literally on the verge of losing his job last year. It was a big story that he was even brought back for this year. That guy, he ain't going anywhere now. But I have to say, Howie Roseman is a hell of an architect. He just keeps reloading roster after roster after roster, and they never really, even when they have quote-unquote down years where their fans are all out of control and out of whack, their down years really aren't that awful.
No, and they're just one of those teams that seems like, and kind of steering this to draft talk ever so slightly, but they're just one of those teams that they just draft whoever the best player is on the board, and then they just worry about it later. And you can see it. They're like the most talented team in football. They didn't necessarily need corners when they drafted Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Cooper DeJean's making plays in the Super Bowl. They're unbelievable when it comes to developing their own homegrown talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, the drafts are outstanding by Roseman. I mean, he hits on everything, and who they bring in via trade, that works out. A.J. Brown's one that comes to mind. It was really cool to see Brandon Graham, in which we knew it was going to be his last game. That's pretty awesome to go out with your last game as a Super Bowl champ. Good for him. And I have to say, I mean, just as a mutual football observer, that's good. Now,
you had to be sick as a New York Giants fan watching that game last night.
Sunday night.
Sunday night, excuse me.
We're recording here on Tuesday evening. Right. Yeah, I'm sure the Giants fans could not have enjoyed Saquon celebrating and all that. I had no other things about the game. I had no issue with the MVP. Hurts definitely deserved it. If it wasn't going to be Hurts, though, Jake Elliott had a hell of a night, man. He was making field goals left and right, and they weren't necessarily short ones either.
No, yeah. How about Kenny Pickett getting a Super Bowl ring before the Steelers?
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I'll say it. That's cool. Yeah, Kenny Pickett, I never would have thought he'd have been the one in victory formation in a Super Bowl, though. That's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah. Does this taint the Mahomes and Reed legacy? I heard some of the talking heads nationally saying that. To me, no. I mean, how many straight times have they gotten there? And they've won 3.
Regardless of if they, as long as they didn't win, people were going to make this argument that the Chiefs' legacy is tainted. They were going to make that argument if they lost to the Bills. Or if they lost to the Texans, they were going to make that argument regardless. So what does it matter if they got all the way there and lost? I feel that same way people made that argument about, LeBron James in the NBA Finals. Just because you get there, it doesn't mean that you should be, punished, I guess, for losing that game, especially when you've already won 3 of them.
Well, and I think Andy Reid's like one of the greatest coaches of all time. And I wonder, though, I think his fuel and passion for winning the game will bring him back, but I wonder if Andy is thinking about hanging out. I mean, what more does he have to prove? Unless the one thing that's interesting from the Chiefs' perspective is Mahomes' 2 best friends and key cogs in that organization thinking about hanging it up, and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce. I haven't heard anything like this. This is just me simply thinking off the top of my head.
I think we've got one more year of Kelce.
You think so?
That's about it, though, I think.
Yeah, a lot of the conspiracy theorists saying he was upset because he was going to propose that night. I don't think that was ever in the cards.
I don't think so either.
I mean, I will say that, and I don't know if our listeners might have seen it, the Twitter and Instagram memes of Taylor getting booed at the Super Bowl, standing there compared to Ashley Tisdale from High School Musical when we grew up, when she's doing her song and dance and skit at the top of the cafeteria steps, and Taylor's standing there at the suite railing. Whoever made those, shout out to you. Those were amazing. I saw those ones, hilarious, hilarious stuff. I cracked up at that.
Yeah,
that was good stuff.
I'll have to check those memes out.
Yeah, those are pretty funny.
I've just seen the videos of the Boo Birds raining down on her in the stadium. I didn't see any of the actual memes that people have created.
Oh yeah, and her with the "what's going on?" That's funny. Well, yeah, I mean, when you're cheered by millions for 2 years straight on your tour, and you suddenly get booed in a public venue, she was probably a little shell shocked. Yeah,
oh, absolutely.
So, one other thing I want to hit on this game real quick. Like I said, I don't think it tarnishes the legacy at all. I think that's, those national shows like that, if they would have won, they would have been making the argument for Mahomes better than Brady.
Oh, 100%.
And then they lost. Now they think the legacy's tarnished. I'm just not going to get that crazy on either way.
Yeah, and Brady's Super Bowl losses, like, it hasn't tarnished his legacy at all.
No. Now Mahomes, if he wants to be better than Brady, he needs about 2 to 3 more of them things.
Yeah.
At minimum.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not going to say he's better than Brady,
No, he's got to have at least 5 to even talk about it.
Right, absolutely. And like I said, the three-peat would have been cool, I guess, from a historical point of view. Was it meant to be? And good for Philadelphia, I guess. Good for the Eagles.
Yeah, and how about the win just from Andy Reid coaching that Eagles organization, 15 years ago? Like, is that the best parting of ways maybe ever? Andy Reid leaves. He wins 3 Super Bowls. Eagles have had 2 Super Bowls since. That was just a best move for both parties there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Nick Sirianni's going to keep on winning, though, because the Super Bowl in Philadelphia doesn't get. Doug Peterson got fired a couple years after. Yeah. It doesn't mean you're going to keep that job forever.
It's a what have you done for me lately league. So lately, absolutely. He's been winning. Obviously, his job's secure for at minimum 2 years.
Yeah.
Unless something just completely.
Well, what is
happens.
Interesting though is Kellen Moore took the Saints job, so he's losing his OC. That's a big deal. Kellen was fantastic. I mean, I think he was a big part of Jalen Hurts getting over that next hurdle and becoming the great quarterback he is now.
Yeah, you can make that argument. I do think obviously the weapons around Hurts definitely help him out too. Saquon, he's got 2 great receivers, and then obviously Goddard's no slouch at tight end. So, and they've always had a good offensive line there.
Yeah,
he's definitely been put in a position to succeed. Hopefully, our team, the Browns, can actually maybe, look at that at that style of running an organization and maybe try it for once.
Yeah, right now I prefer not to talk about that. We're just not going to go there. One last thing about the Super Bowl, and this isn't sports related. In general, every year, people need to get over the halftime show. The overreactions. It was the worst ever. Okay, there's been worse.
Did you enjoy it?
To me, it was the most average to below average. It was not the worst I've ever seen, and it sure as hell wasn't the best.
This is what I'll say. And where I was watching the game, there were just a lot of people talking. I couldn't really hear it, so I can't really speak to how great Kendrick Lamar sounded, or if he sounded bad. I don't really know. But I can tell just from the visual aspect, like I wasn't impressed.
No, but I think in general, people need to get over this damn halftime show. Every year we have people making the big production, the big deal. It's a 10-minute stadium performance. Can I be who? And I apologize for the language. Who gives a shit?
Wow.
Really? Who does? I mean, come on. Every year people make a big crisis out of this thing. It's a 10-minute halftime performance. Who cares? Like, it was the worst I've ever seen. It was the greatest I've ever seen. Listen, I get it. Kendrick's not everybody's cup of tea, and I particularly the boomers weren't happy with this one, and I get it. If it's not Paul McCartney or doing a halftime show or like Huey Lewis in the News, they're not going to be happy either. So like, and the young folks saying it's the greatest ever. Come on, it was not even close to the greatest. No, it was so mid. But overall, the overreactions to me are just enough. Who cares? A 10-minute halftime performance.
Yeah, who do you think is going to be the halftime performance next year? Has it even been announced yet?
No, it won't. It will come out right before the season.
I'm intrigued. You know what halftime show I did really enjoy though was the Rihanna one a couple years ago. It was a simple one. Like I kind of sound hypocritical saying that just from the visual aspect. From the Kendrick Lamar one, I wasn't too impressed, but I enjoyed the Rihanna one a lot.
I liked the Rihanna one too personally. We're probably going to get a lot of hate for that comment, but you know what? Who cares? Again. The overreactions is a 10-minute show, people.
Yeah.
Who cares? And I think they get a lot of people who don't even want to do it. Like the NFL struggles to find folks who want to do it or not, because you're in a stadium like that with all those people and the setup, the quick rapid setup and tear down and all that. It's a real pain in the ass to do it for these performers too. So that's another element of it. So
yeah, I guess that's true.
But again, the overreactions every year. Just stop.
It is always. It's either the best or the worst. Nobody's ever like, yeah, it was all right.
That's what it was this year. It was all right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, next big thing in the NFL is free agency, and that's going to come at us quicker down the lane than we think it is. So that is that for now. We put a bow on the NFL season. We'll obviously in a couple weeks pods we'll be reacting to see, and we'll be talking about the Browns again. But we're going to just push them down.
The break's
road.
been nice. Let's just say that the break's been nice.
We're going to push them down the road a little bit. I'm sure they'll be very active in free agency, but
as they typically are.
Yes, paper champions. But we're not gonna. We're gonna wait and see, and we'll talk about them a little bit. We're gonna take a little bit of a break, unless something major would happen in football. We're gonna talk about this team heavily now. This is gonna be a big focal point of the podcast. Excuse me.
The Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So before we begin, I want to go ahead and tell everybody, go listen to. If you listen to this one, it'll be 3 weeks ago's pod.
It would be 2 or 3 episodes ago.
Yes. Yeah. Go back and listen. We clipped it on Twitter. You could also follow us and see the clip at CLE Sports Realm on Twitter or X, whatever you would prefer to call it.
Yep.
When Kevin and I sat here, I was like head over heels about getting Cam Johnson. And I'll give him credit. This is before any insider said it. And I didn't really even hear about it. Maybe, a couple people would mention it so slightly. But Kevin sat here in the very spot he is now and said they need to do whatever they can to get DeAndre Hunter. Well, they did that. So they go out and get DeAndre Hunter. They make the big move we've been sitting here talking about. We can go all the way back to pods around Thanksgiving, Christmas time, where we sat here and said they need another piece. They need to make another move. They got to go to get equal with Boston. Then you heard the naysayers say, no. This is the best team chemistry I've ever seen in pro sports. They shouldn't mess it up. To me, they got the perfect fit. And the best part was they didn't give up that much. So if you have somehow missed it, I guarantee you most of our listeners haven't. But in case you have, the Cavs have acquired DeAndre Hunter from Atlanta for Karis LeVert, George Niang, and a couple second
round picks and a couple pick swaps.
Yeah, a couple second round picks and a couple pick swaps. I'll start right away. I thought the price would have had to been higher from Hunter because when you sat here, and I gave you your flowers for bringing it up, you were one of the first folks out of anywhere, national, local, wherever, that I heard mention that it was you. And that night when you sat here and I looked at you and I said, I just don't see Atlanta trading him. But they did. And so DeAndre Hunter, first game as a Cavalier, was pretty much what we were expecting. It was really good. Way to go, Colby Altman, too. Did not give up nearly as much as I thought. Kevin, I want you to just overall give me your thoughts on everything I just had to say because I just rambled for a while. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So obviously, to what you were saying, DeAndre Hunter's been a guy that's been on my board for this team. I had mentioned it a couple weeks ago. I always thought, though, with just the two guards, ever since we got Donovan Mitchell, we've looked at this team and said, hey, we need a 6'7", 6'8" wing that plays good defense and can hit 3-point shots. And the first person that came to my mind at the time was OG Anunoby, and that was the original person I wanted. And then obviously the Knicks sent basically Earth, the Moon, and the Stars for him, and then gave him a ton of money. Never a realistic option for the Cavs. And then the next person on my board that kind of fit that criteria was DeAndre Hunter. And I always looked at that Hawks team, and that DeJounte Murray and Trae Young backcourt never really seemed to mesh. And I always thought, maybe that's a team that ends up blowing some of that core up if they can't really get it together. So I've been looking at DeAndre Hunter for a while, and the one concern that they've talked about him specifically over the last year or two is his defense, because that was his kind of his calling card out of Virginia was he hit the three and played great defense. And a lot of the experts have said the defense has slipped off a little bit the past couple of years, but also they've been bringing him off the bench and giving him much more of a workload offensively. He's not going to need that here. We just saw it the other night.
Last night.
We just saw it the other night where he was just clamping up Anthony Edwards, and then he would just stand on the wing and he would get his threes in time in the rhythm of the offense. That's all we need him to do. He's been what I feel like the missing puzzle piece to this team, and I think he definitely stretches this. I'm not going to say that he puts us over the top of a Boston, but I think at minimum that's a 6-game series, and it ends up being a pick 'em. I still favor Boston in a series, maybe 70% wise, but he gets you that much closer to Boston, and the matchup there is unbelievable for this team.
Couple more things that I wanted to hit on. The one concern I have is, and I love the move. I do. Don't get me wrong. I love the move. Couple concerns, though. And this is just me, looking at it, sitting from stepping back a little bit. Injuries have been a problem DeAndre Hunter's entire career. You talk to people in Atlanta, that's a real concern. Like, he cannot stay healthy. I don't believe that many times, if ever, he's played 82 games. This year, though, has been his healthiest year. So they got him at the right time, right? So that's one legit concern to me. The defensive thing, I agree with you, though. I wasn't that worried about it. And obviously last night, DeAndre Hunter on offense didn't really do much. But again, that was his first time playing with these guys. And Kenny Atkinson put it good. You give it the 15-game rule in the NBA. Let him acclimate. Let him adjust to these guys' playing styles. He has never played anywhere else in his NBA career. He was in Atlanta. He was a stalwart in Atlanta. He was there since 2019.
Well, the first quarter of that Timberwolves game, he looked a little bit off. And you could tell it's a new environment, new team, new fan base. So it's going to take him, it's more than a quarter. Obviously from the second quarter on, he played very great. He played pretty aggressive, obviously only I think it was like 25 minutes because of the 5 fouls, but he's going to get that rhythm in the next 10 to 15 games. To your point, Jerome, Kenny Atkinson said it takes that amount of time. I think he's going to fit in wonderfully here.
And I also think, and I don't want to dive too much into this, but I think it's a legit thing too. From his point of view, there's guys in the league who get traded every year.
Right.
Like they end up playing on two or three teams a year. Like a Dennis Schroeder, that guy's played for like half the association now. This is a guy who's never once been traded, been in one place the entire time. So of course it was going to take him a little bit. Big piece of that puzzle though, and the general manager mentioned it. A lot of people in the locker room. Who's one of his best friends? Well, that'd be the 6th man of the year in our opinion, Ty Jerome. They were best buddies at UVA. Pretty cool. They both, on a side note, went to Tony Bennett's retirement ceremony at UVA together on Saturday.
Oh, I did see that.
Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah.
So Ty Jerome will be a big piece in getting acclimated. They've stayed tight. They've stayed really close in touch. So that's cool. It's going to take him a little while mentally. I think DeAndre, from his point of view, was shocked. I don't think, I don't think he envisioned this happening.
Yeah, I saw he had said, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I saw that he had said he saw a rumor about it. So not necessarily he was expecting it, but he wasn't like shell shocked when he got the call and was told the news because he had saw that was a possibility.
Right. So I think with all that being said, what people say about the defense, I'm right with you. He was carrying a heavy load of offense on the Hawks too, as their, number 1 overall pick is getting acclimated to the NBA and so on and so forth. DeAndre is picking up a big piece of the offense. As we see, he's averaging a career high in points. And to your point, he's not going to have to do that here under any circumstances. You've got about 3 guys in Garland, Mitchell, and Mobley who can carry that scoring load. Maybe some nights he'll be asked to be a 4th option scoring-wise, and even Allen gets his a lot of nights too.
Yeah, and he's not a bad ball handler by any means, DeAndre Hunter. So, I feel like some of the fan base, might be a little bit scared of the fact that like he doesn't handle the ball like a Karis LeVert. And I would say Karis LeVert's probably a better ball handler, but that doesn't mean DeAndre's a bad one. I think they're, equal in slashing. DeAndre's got a better 3-point shot, better defense as well. This trade was just a home run for the Cavs. And I think, a lot of this fan base has been talking about him matching up on Jason Tatum. I think he's going to be matched up more so on Jaylen Brown.
I'll be interested to see how that happens in the playoffs. Actually, I'll be more interested to see when we play them here in not that far away. One more regular season matchup.
The matchups are going to be interesting against Boston because just of how that center matchup's going to work.
The best way I can describe him, and it's to relate to our fans here and Cleveland fans, is he is as good defensively, if not better than Isaac Okoro, but his offensive game is like 700 million times better than Okoro's.
Yeah, I would say just as good of a defender as Okoro, and what would make him better, I think, is just his length. I saw he has like a 7'2" wingspan or something absolutely ridiculous like that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they play the matchups for sure. And Kenny Atkinson, and he is definitely known as a coach that likes to experiment with some matchups too. He was alluding to the fact of running like a Donovan Mitchell at the 1, Hunter at the 2, Okoro at the 4, which I think would almost be, for lack of a better term, ass backwards. You feel like you would want Okoro to be at the 2 and Hunter to be playing the bigger guys, but it's going to be interesting to see how Atkinson plays with these matchups. And the Cavs are still a deep team.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said, it was a home run move. It was almost a move that they kind of had to make, but you just didn't know if they were going to be able to make it. And I saw Crispy Haynes, National Insider, had said he had heard a whisper about it when the Hawks had came here a week ago to play, or it would be 2 weeks ago now on Thursday when this gets released.
Oh, okay.
That they had came here to play, and he had heard that Landry Fields and Kobe Altman were starting to maybe put together a little bit of the framework and just getting the initial conversations. And it took about a whole week. But Chris Haynes goes, it was like kind of a whisper, like, keep an eye on this, but I doubt it happens.
Basically, if you think about it, let me know because I'd be interested.
Yeah.
From Kobe's end, basically.
And it was like maybe a little bit of just Landry saying, well, if you gave us the right pieces in return, we'd be considering it,
I saw that they originally asked for Craig Porter, Jalen Tyson, and a 2031 first.
Yes.
And somehow Kobe talked it down to not giving up, because clearly the backup plan right now for the future at backup point guard is going to be Craig Porter. Ty Jerome's going to get
a bag.
He's going to get a bag this offseason. So for Kobe to be able to finagle his way around that and get it to what it was, I think is just genius GM.
I mean, I saw it was praised nationally. It was praised locally. It was looked at as a great move of everybody. And I think the biggest shock was, and this came nationally and locally, was the fact they were able to get it done and give up as little as they did. And that's no disrespect to Karras and George, who, by the way, are was hanging out with Trey, and they've won 3 in a row down there. So maybe it's a trade that works out for both sides. I mean, in very early returns.
Right.
But, I saw those guys are playing good ball down there. Karras had a big game for them last night. In the first game they played on Saturday night, George went 4-7 from beyond the arc.
Yeah, so he hit 4 in a row at one point.
Yeah, so Hawks getting a little hot since they made the trade too. So maybe it does work out for both sides. I mean, obviously that all remains to be seen, but the key piece was DeAndre Hunter. And this was a move of the Cavaliers saying, look, Boston, we're ready for you.
We're all in.
We're all in. And last year we were there, but we didn't have our stars. We didn't have Jared Allen. We didn't have Donovan for majority of the series. But this year, if we're healthy, we're here and we're all in, and we're trying to knock you off. Yep. And it was weird, but it took Kobe Altman a while to get here, and I'm glad he got here from a level point of view. The Cavs sat on their ass and didn't do a damn thing the last 2 deadlines.
Right.
And
we haven't made a deadline move since Karis LeVert, if I can remember.
And we alluded to that on last week's pod, too. And Kobe Altman said we can't just rest on our laurels. We have to continue getting better. So I like from his general manager approach, he knows the window's wide open right now. And we know in the NBA, the player movement and mobility is nonstop. It's a carousel constantly. So when your window's open in the NBA, you have to go because that window slams and it slams shut quick in the NBA.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Now, when it comes to DeAndre Hunter, it has kind of been a debate amongst the fan base as opposed to whether they would want him to start or whether they would want him to come off the bench because that's what he's been doing this season in Atlanta. Do you lean any particular way? Obviously, us recording this Tuesday night, we don't have the answer for the Wednesday game. But just from seeing Monday, with Max Strus ruled out, Hunter got put into the starting lineup. Do you think that sticks, or do you think that was just Strus isn't playing, we're just throwing him in right now?
I think Hunter ends up starting long term. I don't know about soon. Like Strus may start the next couple weeks, but I think when the chips are pushed to the center of the table and we're in the playoffs, I think the Cavs starting 5 in Monday night's game against Minnesota is who they'll end up starting the playoffs. That's what I think. And Hunter started a good bit of his career too. This is not a guy
he started most of his career.
Right,
yeah,
right.
It's basically been outside of this year.
Right. And, him playing with that second unit in Atlanta, I think, is why the points per game average is so much higher.
He had to carry that second unit,
right?
For sure.
He was carrying the second scoring load, and like we pointed out, it's a perfect fit for him. DeAndre, We want you for your defense. Some nights, yeah, go ahead. If you're hot, shoot the ball. But
Get us 25 occasionally.
No offense to you, we got guys who score the ball at a way better level than you, and they're doing that here already. We just need your defense, and we need you to shut down Jalen or Jason, whoever it is.
We basically do run a 2-point guard offense with 2 centers and then just a guy that can shoot threes. Like, that's basically like what the foundation of this offense is trying to be under Kenny Atkinson.
Right, and back to the Okoro point, too. I like that DeAndre is comfortable shooting. He doesn't mind it. He's used to carrying a scoring load in Atlanta. We're coming from Atlanta. Isaac Okoro, they got to, basically slap him upside the head, shoot the damn ball something. The guy don't want to shoot.
Yeah.
So, this is a guy who's comfortable being a 3-and-D player. Isaac Okoro was a D, but he wouldn't give you the 3. And when he did shoot it just wasn't a consistent enough level.
Yeah, the only problem was that he to your point, he wasn't comfortable enough. So I give him a ton of credit for his development of his 3-point shot over the last few years, but also his percentage is high because he's open for the majority of them, if not all of them.
Yeah, I mean, you saw in the playoffs, particularly 2 years ago against New York, they weren't even going anywhere near him. They weren't in the same time zone as him. I mean, they were just letting him shoot, and he couldn't make it. No, nobody's going to let DeAndre Hunter shoot like that, but if you're worried about the 2 guards and the 2 bigs, and you let him shoot like that, he's going to knock it down.
Yeah, he's going to knock it down, and then if you go out there, it's more room for Mitchell and Garland to drive in. Those close in. That opens up the oop. The entire offense gets opened up with DeAndre Hunter inserted into that starting lineup. I'm beyond excited. It's the missing piece for this team.
Absolutely. We couldn't be more thrilled. We were sitting here hoping and praying last Tuesday, and we got what we wanted.
Let me ask you this now, because when we talked a few weeks ago, you had said that Cam Johnson was your option 1.
Yeah.
Would you have been happier with a Cam Johnson, or are you happier with this deal?
Well, I think looking back on it, and hindsight's 2020, but looking back on it, we haven't had much time to. Right now, I'd have to say I'm happier with DeAndre Hunter because league sources say that Brooklyn's asking price for Cam was just through the roof. I mean, it was just absurd. It was off the charts. And the asking price for DeAndre, as we covered it, elaborated on extensively, it wasn't all that high.
Yeah, I was thinking that the 2031 first-round pick or 2031 first-round pick was going to have to be in play, because I think that's the only first-round pick that we actually are allowed to trade, because I think there's like a year limit where you can't trade past a certain year or whatever. So I think 2031, it finally came up from the Mitchell deal. So I definitely thought that was going to be something that was on the table, and to do it for a couple second-round picks and
swaps.
We're definitely going to miss. We're definitely going to miss, I think, George Niang's just bulliness of just getting in the other team's face and his toughness. I think we're going to miss that more than the Karis LeVert on the court play. Just looking back at those two players, but do want to thank Karis for a fun few years and George Niang for a fun year and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, it has nothing to do with on the court, but where I missed George Niang the most last night was watching the post-game show, and without Tristan, right. Tristan poured one out for his boy, and he said, "Stay dangerous." But somebody else is going to have to step up and take that role with Tristan, because it was fun, but I was like, man, that's where we first realized, man, George isn't here to hang out with Boobie Gibson and Kaylee Griffin on the post game. So
George was really cool, dude. He was always posting stuff.
Very charismatic.
Yeah,
fellow.
absolutely.
And Karis, the bottom line on him is, he was here. He was the first. Really, what Karis LeVert signified here was, hey, we don't suck anymore.
It was the first go for it move of this upcoming
of this current
Cavs
era.
Team. Yeah, of the current era. Yeah.
Current era. And it was like, hey, Karis signified, hey, we're actually a decent team, and we don't flat out suck anymore. So that was really cool when they made that move. The guy had some great showings here. Just overall, bottom line.
He dropped 40 in TD Garden.
Yep.
Just last year, wasn't
41.
it? Yeah.
Yep. The bottom line, though, is the peaks and valleys was just too much.
Oh, it was. That spin a wheel, for those listening or watching, the spin a wheel graphic for Karis LeVert was one of the most accurate things I've ever seen. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's just one of those wheels you'd spin it like a carnival, and it had just random NBA players. You never knew if you were going to get Michael Jordan or Anthony Bennett, basically, when you were spinning the wheel on Karis LeVert.
No, honestly, you're 100% right. And he just too inconsistent. And it's not like it would be game to game. It was weeks at a time. He'd be, hot, couldn't miss for a week. And then the next week he couldn't hit, the broadside of a barn with a shot.
Which did suck because he was supposed to be the second unit guy, the sixth man. So if your sixth man's streaky and your starters leave, you're kind of screwed.
Yep.
So, but then on the other side of that, when he's hot, you got nothing to worry about when the starters get out. So it's just to your point, it was the hot and coldness that was always there for Karras.
Yeah.
But
absolutely. One last thing, let's talk about the Cavs on the court. Darius Garland buzzer beater against Detroit last week. So we'll do a little Cavs week in review here real quick. Darius Garland buzzer beater should not have had to happen, quite frankly. I mean, they were up 10 with like a minute to go and then needed a buzzer beater to get by the Pistons. JB Bickerstaff's doing exactly what he did here, though, boy. He gets those really garbage teams to a level of where they're good, but he's not going to get you past it.
Yeah, it would I don't know. It would kind of stink to be JB Bickerstaff because you're just going to go to a rebuilding team. You're going to build them up to contention, and then you're just not going to be that elite of a coach enough to be able to get them to the point where they need to be. But yeah, what JB Bickerstaff
I'll tell you what, he has Cade Cunningham and those fellas playing some good basketball though.
And credit to our good friend Phil Yan. As soon as JB Bickerstaff was fired, I think he was the first person to bring up the Pistons as he would be a perfect fit there, and he really has been.
Yeah, absolutely. So then the Cavs go to DC and take care of business. I think it was the day after the trade, and you could tell that some of those guys were playing with heavy hearts that night. They were really emotional, but nonetheless, they do what they had to do, took care of the garbage Wizards, and won by 10.
Yeah, I think I saw before the game they had asked Darius Garland, how he felt after the trade, and the first thing he said was that he was sad.
Yeah.
Because Karis LeVert and George Niang, they're good friends of his, and always sucks to see guys leave like that.
And I had mentioned this last week on the podcast, and I think it's worth mentioning again. Multiple local and national sources who cover this team say it is one of the tightest professional sports teams they've ever seen. So making a move, it was a shock. I think it was, but I think some of those guys knew if you injected true serum into a lot of those fellas on the roster, they knew that they probably needed this type of move. But it does suck when you're bonded and you spend more time with those guys than you do your families, your wives, your kids, all that. So it sucks when, the trade deadline is a tough thing for a lot of guys mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
So,
speaking of the trade deadline moves, was there a particular move outside of the Cavs?
I'm getting there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the next topic here. You got to follow the agenda in order.
I'm following it.
Yeah. So we'll get to that. Actually, I kind of went out of order. And
I can bring some stuff up. Yeah.
No. That was my fault. But I wanted to finish the last thing. The Cavs do win 128-107 last night in DeAndre Hunter's debut. Boy, I'll tell you what. Watching that game, the Timberwolves they struggle to score the basketball unless it's in Anthony Edwards' hands.
Oh my God! I think it was the first 8 minutes of the game. I think,
especially with Julius Randle out. They really struggle to score the basketball. I mean, because Gobert's not a guy who can go get his own shot. He needs it in the post.
That's a good point. And Jaden McDaniels is out there more so for defense than anything.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, they really rely on him a lot.
Nas Reed's a good offensive player, though. He started.
Yeah, he's not bad. But Cavs took care of business. And, boy, watching the game last night, I mean, you saw DeAndre Hunter. Like we said, the offense will come. But the defense was immediately there. He was tenacious.
Oh yeah, he was absolutely tenacious. It was actually really fun to watch. And even when he wasn't guarding Anthony Edwards, when like Edwards got switched on or Garland got switched on to Edwards, Hunter seemed to be roaming around that area. And as soon as he thought about taking a shot, Hunter's arm was back up in his face.
Right.
So even though Anthony Edwards went off for over 40 the other night, it wasn't really that efficient up until basically the end of the first half.
Yeah, absolutely. And one last thing, Cavs week ahead, they got only one game. That's tomorrow night in Toronto, and then that is it. It is the NBA All-Star break.
Yeah, which it'll actually be fun to watch that Toronto team with Brandon Ingram being there now.
Yeah, did you see he signed a big extension today?
Yeah, 3 years, 120.
Yeah. So
that was a big addition. It seems like they're just kind of stacking talent there.
They're
in
trying,
Toronto, and they're just trying to figure out what sticks.
Yeah, they're trying. So Cavs should win that game tomorrow night and go into the All-Star break on a high note, I would think.
Yeah, we would hope
Absolutely.
so.
Yeah, they'll be favored for sure. Or they are favored, actually, I can say that. All right, back to what you wanted to talk about there. So I put on here, obviously, wasn't going to say the biggest move of the deadline. We already all know what that was.
Right, Luka for AD.
And if you want to hear our complete thoughts about that, we spent a good 20 minutes on last week's pod, got diving deep into that.
Yeah, we also talked about the De'Aaron Fox deal last week, too.
Yeah, so we're going to go a little bit different here. Kevin, to you, what was the most underrated move of the deadline that's not garnering a lot of attention, but you thought, wow, that's really going to be impactful for that team?
The first one I want to say is Jimmy Butler to the Warriors, but that's more so, I wouldn't say that's under the radar. I'll actually stick with Brandon Ingram to Toronto.
Yeah, I think that was a good one.
I think if Toronto gets into the play-in tournament, which I would imagine they would at the worst case scenario, I think they end up in a playoff series.
I mean, they're pretty bad right now, but
I don't know. I think we're gonna end up seeing them in the play-in.
But the problem is, Quickly hasn't been healthy most of the year. He's a huge piece.
Right.
RJ Barrett's been pretty inconsistent with his health. Huge piece. So you're missing your two huge pieces, and for a lot of time. And Scotty Barnes is a good player, but it's tough for him to carry the entire load, obviously.
Right.
And so I think this Ingram move was a smart move. He had been rumored to be leaving New Orleans for quite a while.
It seems like the last couple of years he's at least been a name that's been brought up. And if you're looking at that Toronto team, their starting five is pretty impressive if it's all healthy. Quickly, Barrett, Ingram, obviously, Barnes, and then Jakob Poeltl. That's a starting five that if they're not going to at least be hitting their shots, they're going to be physical with you for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought the Ingram one was definitely underrated too. Another one I thought was underrated, a guy that I had mentioned bringing here. The Kings not giving up much and going to get Jonas Valanciunas. I think he's a darn good player. He's still a very productive player in this league. Someone who I mentioned giving, the Cavs potentially bringing in. They obviously didn't, but I think that was a good very underrated move by the Sacramento Kings. And Zach LaVine seems to be off to a good and fast start out there in Sacktown.
Yeah.
So
Jonas Valanciunas was a guy that we talked about and would have been honestly a pretty good addition because it's still an area I'd love to see the Cavs if they can somehow address it on the buyout market with God knows what happens in the next couple weeks with some of these veterans. So getting another backup big would be nice for the Cavs at least.
One last thing I think we have to touch on the NBA. The Mark Williams for Dalton Connect trade and the mess that's turned into.
Yeah.
First of all, you don't see this happen hardly ever in pro sports. A trade gets rescinded, you see this happen more with free agent signings that you are rumored to be, and then they don't end up taking place because of failed physicals or whatever. Yep. Now, first of all, Dalton Connect last night, that poor kid as a rookie has gone through way more than he's had to be. First of all, he's a darn good player, but he's been overshadowed by LeBron Jr. the whole time, by Bronny, who's not nearly as good of a talent, but when your father's LeBron James, it is what it is.
Yep.
So then you see him last night. Boy, he's not clapping. He's not cheering. He looked very disengaged and disinterested. And I saw a lot of people roasting him online. The poor kid has just been through a absolute whirlwind. He knows that the team doesn't want him. He's got to go back there. And he told JJ Redick, and I'll give him a lot of credit last night, I'm not playing. He said, I need a little bit of time to process all this. I thought that was a fine move by Dalton Connect.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, though, coming from a rookie. I feel like I would have expected this, maybe year 3, year 4, you've been with the team for a few years or whatever. But, a rookie telling his head coach that he's not going to play, it was a little bit interesting to me. Now, I get it. You're going back to an organization that, sought a trade to get rid of you. It's not like the Luka one where the Mavericks came to them and then they offloaded it. They went to the Hornets and asked for Mark Williams, and then offered Dalton Connect in the deal. So I do get it from that aspect. It's a very interesting scenario, and like you said, one that you don't see too often.
Now you see it's getting uglier. The Hornets are accusing the Lakers of failing the physical on purpose.
I did read that.
I mean, it's a real mess, and it's real ugly right now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, obviously, it's not like they can reverse the trade back, right?
No, I don't think so.
What can the Hornets really do grievance-wise?
No, I mean, they can file as many grievances as they want, but with the Lakers picking up Alex Len today, I mean, they have their bigs, so I don't think they're all that concerned with going to,
I don't either.
They've already pivoted, and Rob Pelinka's moved on to his next move.
Yep.
Luka debut last night. Did you get a chance to see it? I did not personally.
I got to see a few minutes of it. I got to see basically him introduced. I saw his first bucket. I think a couple assists from him and one that he had. So I guess a decent amount of it.
I know we spent so much time on this last week, but a couple quick points because this is obviously like the biggest story in sports right now, so there's more fallout from it. Dirk going to the Crypto Center or whatever the heck it's called.
Yeah,
now.
Do you think that was a statement against Dallas?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now Dirk said, "I love my Mavericks, but I love Luka." No, that was Dirk. I think. When was the last time Dirk just showed up at a Lake? Dirk's not a guy who's big into the spotlight
that's
either.
True.
He's not. Yeah. He's not going to do that unless he has real reason, to make a statement. Another quick thing. Mavericks do a fan segment last night of karaoke to Whitney Houston's "I Want to Dance with Somebody." Large man gets placed on the screen. People are dancing, having a good time. He realizes he's on the screen. He's singing the song. He looks up and instantly starts screaming, "Fire Nico!" and was escorted outside
I
of the stadium.
saw they were escorting people out with that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And how unfortunate for the Mavericks, actually, with AD just injuring his groin on a non-contact injury immediately.
And we had talked about this last week. This was the national narrative, but actually he did play a bunch of games this year.
Yeah.
He was healthy. He was having a good year.
And then he gets to Dallas.
He seems excited. He handled it very well, very professionally. Yep. Seemed genuinely really interested and excited to play for Kyrie. He had a prior relationship with Nico Harrison. All for naught. He's out for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
Kyrie's going to have to really carry the load. And as much as Kyrie likes playing with AD, I'm sure he wishes he still had 77 as his co-pilot in blue.
Oh, I'm sure he does too. Of course he does.
Kyrie, for a guy, and sorry to cut you off, a guy who we knew had some maturity and growing up to do issues, boy, he's come a long way since he left our neck of the woods, because the way he's handled this and everything he's said professionally, I'm just going to say this, that's not the way he would have handled it several years ago as a Cav. Good for him. He's matured and finally grown up.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, ever since he left Boston, he's basically accepted, I think, that he's the number 2 at best on a contending team. But I was going to say, just with Anthony Davis, it was so cool, for a guy who, we had talked about this last week, a guy that, forced his way out of New Orleans, got what he wanted by going to Los Angeles, and we haven't heard anything from him since, basically. He got what he wanted. So he's definitely not, the drama queen that he was in New Orleans, basically. But with him being in Dallas, going to a place that basically just lost their heart and soul, their savior, their franchise, and just coming and bringing out the most energy in those first few minutes, and that putback dunk that he had.
He was playing a really damn good game.
It was awesome. And then the timeout's called, and he's getting the Dallas crowd involved. PJ Washington's going up Kyrie. It was one of those moments that energy had to be there for that Dallas fan base to get them excited about something again. And it was awesome that AD brought that out, and I'm going to give him a ton of credit for doing that. It was really cool to see.
Yeah, shout out Anthony Davis.
Absolutely.
Good for him. All right, well, we are going to move on to our final segment, our new favorite segment here, a little odds and ends to wrap up the week's episode. First of all, Guardians resolved their broadcast issue, sort of, right? So Guardians TV, CleGuardians.tv or whatever it is. I believe that's what it is. Fact-checking myself. I believe that's what. CleGuardians.tv, you can buy all the games for $100. They said the cable issue will be resolved after. We'll see if they're still available on a platform through cable. I imagine they'll figure something out through there, or else they're going to have a whole bunch of boomers with pitchforks really upset with them. So, because they're not going through and they're not finding the streaming service on their smart TV platform, on their home screen. So they better figure that out. $100, though, I saw a lot of people upset with that. Folks, look how much you pay for cable. We can criticize this team lengthy, and we will, and we're going to start to a little bit more as pitchers and catchers have reported now, and we're going to start criticizing them, and rightly so in a lot of ways. But $100, Kevin, I thought people were way over the board reacting to this.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It ends up coming out to what, like 60, 70 cents a game or something like that. So,
and look how much the people who are complaining, go check how much Spectrum, or not to, purposely criticize them as a brand, or, Cox or whoever your cable provider, DirecTV, look how much they're charging you.
Yep, no, 100%.
It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, no, not at all. Especially when you're looking at these different streaming services that, you're watching the Netflixes and the Hulus and the HBOs, and each of those are racking up to $10 a month. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this membership to watch your favorite baseball team 162 times, it sounds like we're almost being sponsored by them doing this right now. But to watch your favorite baseball team at 60, 70 cents a game, you're watching your favorite show for much more than that.
And I can assure everybody, just for clarification purposes, we have not received a cent from Rob Manfred nor Paul Dolan, and never will.
No, and this might be the only time that we advocate for purchasing something from them.
Absolutely. So the Guardians did make some off-season acquisitions. They just happened to all be former players in the television department. I really like the post-game analysts they put together. I mean, it was their biggest move of the offseason.
I'm excited for Jason Kipnis post-games.
Yeah,
I really am.
Jason Kipnis, Ben Broussard, Cody Allen.
Yep.
I mean, boy, they brought back some great players. I mean, if this was 2008, our 2008, 2012, the roster would be loaded. Too bad these guys have all been retired for extended period of time. They're just going to be talking about the guys because, boy, their biggest offseason move was the television analysts.
And Dolan's happy because they took less than the vet minimum to do it.
Absolutely. So, the new post-game analysts, hopefully we have maybe another on-the-field acquisition to talk about. I highly doubt it, but, it is what it is, and we'll be doing some more Guardian stuff upcoming here, so that's something for you guys to look forward to. We'll be getting into spring training. We'll have games here shortly to talk about.
Hopefully in the next few episodes, we can actually talk about maybe an addition to the starting lineup at some point. Or
the rotation, but
anything.
We both don't think so.
No.
If you guys want the offseason moves, check out the tweet today of the TV analysts because they are great. Ben Broussard, Cody Allen, Chris Jimenez, Jason Kipnis. The TV analysts, it's going to be excellent.
It's a shame we won't be able to see them on the road, though.
That's right. He's right. No pregame road, and I think postgame's cut down to 15 minutes.
I have no idea.
Yeah, postgame is cut down to 15 minutes.
Whatever
too.
to cut the costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Another odds and ends thing we've been talking about on the last couple podcasts. The Cleveland State Vikings streak is over.
No more Go Vikings.
Yeah, but they did bounce back the following game with a win.
Go Vikings.
So yeah, they lost to Northern Kentucky on the road. They bounced back with a win. So still probably the favorites to win the Horizon League and be in March Madness, which we'll obviously be talking about that coming up a little bit here soon. And getting you into the college basketball mode, the Iron Bowl is happening. Basketball edition, and they are 1 versus 2 in the country this Saturday at 4:00.
Who's the home team in that game?
I believe.
I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah,
actually.
can you double check on that for me?
Because whoever it is, I think that's who I'm gonna pick.
I don't want to give our listeners
wrong information.
False information.
We don't want you to do that either.
No,
it's just taking me 1 second here. I apologize.
But 1 versus 2 basketball Iron Bowl edition,
hosted by the Crimson Tide.
Okay, so hosted by the Tide. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The SEC, as notorious as a football conference as it was, they are really good. For you college basketball fans out there, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. They are a really good basketball conference now.
Yeah, absolutely.
They might have had a better year this year in basketball than they did football. Like, their own fans wouldn't want to admit that, but it might be true.
You could absolutely make that argument, 100%.
Yeah. Tennessee's really good. Mississippi State's good.
How's Florida this year?
I think Florida's not too bad. I think
they typically aren't.
Yeah, they're okay.
I know Missouri goes on a few runs here and there.
In our last odds and ends thing, Kevin's going to forever not forgive me for putting this in. One thing you'll learn about on this podcast, Kevin's not a golf fan. Doesn't enjoy watching it. I don't golf that much. I'm not very skilled at it, but I do, however, love watching it. One of the first tournaments that I really get into after the Waste Management, one of the first ones that I know it's going to be, something I'm going to be starting to really pay attention to is the Genesis Invitational, which is Tiger Woods' tournament. Those of you golf fans know that. It's actually been moved down south to Torrey Pines this upcoming weekend. Because of the wildfires in LA, it will not be at Riviera Country Club as it typically always is. So it's been moved down to Torrey Pines in San Diego. And it's Tiger's tournament, but unfortunately with the passing away of his mother, he will not be playing in it. He's going to take some more time. So Tiger not playing in his own event. But, sorry, I did slip a little golf.
Oh,
in.
no, that's all right. I've actually, as you know, I've gotten into golf a little bit over the last year or so. A little bit less than a year. I'd probably say around like 8 months or so. I've gotten into golf a little bit more last 8 or 9 months. Playing-wise, still not necessarily watching. But I don't not enjoy it nearly as much as I used to.
Yeah.
I think we went crazy for a hole-in-one just last year. I forget what it was, but we were watching that live.
It was actually at it used to be called the Honda Classic. It's in Palm Beach. Now it's like the Kozignik. I don't even know the sponsor, so I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, but I remember going crazy for that one because that was really cool to see.
Yeah, Aaron Rye was that hole.
Yeah, it was.
So little odds and ends things for you there. And that'll just about do it. Kevin, would you like to tell the people what we'd appreciate if they did for us?
Well, we would definitely appreciate if you would follow us on X or Twitter at CLE Sports Realm. Always, if you're listening on Spotify, please give this episode a like, give us a like, follow, turn on those notifications. Just helps you not miss any episodes, and definitely just helps us out in being able to grow from here. And please leave a comment and engage with us. We've been getting a few comments here and there on Spotify. I haven't checked the comments on YouTube. Hopefully, we're still doing some pretty good activity there.
We got a reply on Twitter when we tweeted the DeAndre Hunter video.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, somebody.
Guy gave me my flowers.
I'm sorry, if you're listening right now, I don't know. I can't remember your username, but nonetheless, you gave Kevin big time props, so he appreciates that.
Yeah.
We appreciate that as a show. So thank you for all the support we've gotten. We hope to continue growing and bringing you our perspective from Cleveland and sports around the globe. Well, not around the country.
Around the country. Yeah. Around Cleveland, Ohio.
Yes. So definitely like to talk about all that. We really enjoy doing what we do, and we would like to continue doing it, so please help us out in that regard. That'll do it for us this week. We'll be back next week with another episode and plenty of things to talk about. We'll start diving into college basketball as conference tournament season is approaching and March Madness is approaching. So we'll definitely dive into that a little bit. But a good way, if you're one of those folks who just likes to watch college basketball this time of year, I'd say a good way to get into it would be the 1-2 Iron Bowl matchup, as we brought up in our
Saturday, 4 p.m.
odds and ends segment. Derek, thanks for everything you did on the other side. Kevin, good job by you. For Kevin, for Jerome. That's me and Derek. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys next week. Have a good week.
Go Cavs.